Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority. Greetings and welcome to our latest Let's Talk Mental Health webinar. I'm Tom Castañeda, the System Director of Marketing and Public Relations for South Texas Health System. Thank you for joining us. Now, your mental health matters. It's an essential part of your overall health and well-being. If you're feeling stressed, lonely, anxious, or hopeless, it can have a negative impact on your mental health. So to help Rio Grande Valley residents prioritize their mental health, STHS Behavioral hosts these monthly Let's Talk Mental Health webinars. Through education on common mental health challenges and strategies to keep your mental health in check, hopefully more people will open up about their own mental health issues and get professional help if needed. Now, in this installment, we'll be discussing distress behaviors, which are actions, words, or reactions that indicate a person is experiencing emotional pain, stress, or difficulty coping with a situation. Now, these behaviors can range from physical aggression to social withdrawal and can be an indicator of underlying issues like anxiety, depression, or trauma. In the U.S., about 15% of adults report feeling distressed mentally about 14 days out of the month, according to America's Health Rankings. Frequent distress behavior can lead to difficulties in daily life, like problems with sleep, appetite, concentration, and relationships, and potentially increase the risk of developing more serious mental health conditions or physical health problems. So to learn more about the impact of distress behaviors, we're joined by Greg Vargas, a nurse educator with South Texas Health System Behavioral. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, first of all, let's talk a little bit about a nurse educator. You have been a nurse educator for 2 years at STHS Behavioral. What do you do as a nurse educator?
Still trying to figure that out. No. So I've been educating a lot of the new nurses as they come on in, show them how the units work, and the most important part, how to recognize distress behaviors, which is what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. And you are really passionate about this topic. When they were given the opportunity to choose topics, you chose this one. What is it about distress behaviors that you're so passionate about?
I feel like there's a lot of need when it comes to anxiety, and I feel like that's overlooked a lot. So the fact that I get to at least help out the next generation of nurses as they come into South Texas Behavioral to recognize, catch those behaviors at the anxiety level. Mm-hmm. When the patient starts to pace, when the patient starts to withdraw, that's your opportune time before it gets worse. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really push, and that's what I want to hopefully inspire others, or at least let them know of those opportunities.
And you said that there are 4 levels of distress behavior. So anxiety being level 1, so that's where you want to catch it. You're looking for those warning signs. Yes. But then there's also what's the second area has to do with behavior, right?
Yes, if anxiety is not assisted, if it's not helped, if there's no validation, unfortunately it can lead to defensive behaviors.
Okay.
So you might have somebody who's yelling at you, who's threatening you, who's trying to hurt you because they see you as a threat.
Okay.
And if that's the case, we need to change our tactics. Mm-hmm. The way we help somebody at anxiety is going to be very different from how we help somebody at the defensive stage.
Mm-hmm. And on the third stage, you're talking about acting out. So this is basically now it's getting physical, punching walls. You talk about cases of road rage, things like that you're going to start seeing.
Yes. Unfortunately, that's what we want to avoid, the acting out stage. At acting out, exactly like you mentioned, punching the walls, putting themselves at imminent risk, whether within seconds of serious bodily harm. Road rage, of course, you're worried about somebody, especially here since everybody has a gun, or we assume that somebody has a gun.
In Texas, there's a lot of guns.
Yes. So you want to make sure that you don't honk at the wrong person, because they can easily go from anxiety, might even skip defensive stage, you go straight to acting out.
Oh, wow. And then the fourth stage is the release of tension. So this is where you want people who are experiencing distress behaviors to get to this point, actually, right?
No matter where, whether it's a patient, whether it's a student at school, or whether it's a loved one, if they're at anxiety, defensive, or risk behavior, the goal is to get them to tension reduction.
Okay.
Because when they're at anxiety, when they're at defensive stage or even at risk, they're thinking with their fight or flight. They're not thinking clearly. Their logic's out of the game.
Okay.
So at this stage, you can't teach them anything. So you want to wait till you get them to tension reduction.
All right.
Once they're at the reduction of tension, now they can learn. Now they can find out why that behavior was maybe unacceptable.
And they can start processing it and really looking for those coping mechanisms to avoid those behaviors.
Exactly.
And you say that there are two ways to release tension. So verbally, which is basically talking and
just
talking
like we're doing.
through it. And that is something that is recommended for adults.
It's recommended for pretty much everybody, but it's highly recommended for adults because most adults don't want to release it physically, or if they do, it's not going to be in a socially acceptable way.
Okay.
So for adults, just like right now, honestly, I'm in the anxiety stage. Right, we're on the screen. So I got
live on Facebook.
Live on Facebook. So I'm a little bit at the anxiety stage. But us talking is me venting out my feelings, and will help to reduce that tension. And that's what we want. The second option is your physical.
Your physical, and that one is you say that that's really recommended for kids, especially.
Definitely, yes. For kids, you want them active, you want them playing, you want them running, you want them engaged in some kind of physical activity to release that tension.
And that's no wonder my mother always said, go run around the block for a few anytime I was having a tantrum. Is that what it is?
Hey, it worked.
It worked, apparently. You go. All right, well, you have a great presentation for us. You're going to basically talk about distress behaviors. What are some of those warning signs and symptoms to look out for, and ways to cope and treat? So let's get started.
Okay. So we'll get started here. Our Let's Talk on Distress Behavior. And we're going to start with an overview of what we're going to talk about. When it comes to communication, there's a fundamental role that we play into attempting to let somebody know what we want as far as our message. We can either play the role as the sender, the person who is talking, and in our case, the person who's using behavior to talk for us. There's also the role of the receiver, which is the one who's receiving the message, and they're getting it through the channel of nonverbal, paraverbal, and verbal. Our receiver, unfortunately, has to kind of filter out all the noise and decode the message that you're trying to send. So as we're going to talk about today, we're going to focus on behavior, the nonverbal, the paraverbal. Behavior is the main way we as humans communicate. From the way a child cries to kind of get what they want, to the way people cheer for their favorite football team, where they want to see them win, or even cry when they lose. Unfortunately, if we're a Dallas Cowboy fan, we've been through that. But also to the way that, like you mentioned earlier, road rage, the way we get cut off when we're on the highway, and we might communicate to that person how we feel with our nonverbal. All this may or may not include words, but your body language is definitely going to send out the message with or without those words, and the listener gets that message whether it's the way that you intended to give it, or maybe the way through your body language you let a different message slip. And speaking of letting it slip, your paraverbal. Your paraverbal communication also has a huge impact on your message. So we're going to talk about paraverbal communication today, how it can either make or break your message. We're also going to talk about how we deal with anxiety and behaviors that are associated with anxiety so that we can jump in and help that person at the anxious stage. We'll also talk about the defensive behaviors and what it looks like and what the person is trying to tell me through that behavior. And finally, we're going to cover how we can help somebody who's communicating to you through their behavior, whether it's acceptable or unacceptable, and how we can get them to maybe try something different next time. So hope you brought something good to eat, so we're going to get right on it. We'll talk about communication. Communication. What is the way we communicate the most? If we look at it statistically, people communicate the most through their behavior with their body language. We make eye contact or break eye contact, depending on how comfortable we are with the person. The way we move our hands during a conversation, the way I stand, sit, or lean, my facial expressions, my personal space, my posture, my use of touch, all of these ways make up more than half of the conversation. After that, only about a third of a conversation is going to be the paraverbal. And I haven't even talked about the words that we use yet. But our paraverbal, the volume, the rate of speech, our tone, it all plays a huge role in how we communicate. we've all often heard that phrase, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And it plays a lot into what we're talking about today. That last bit, I talked about half of the communication message being your body language, 17% being or a third being your paraverbal. The last 8 to 17% is actually the words that you use. So our receiver has to kind of filter out all that noise that we're sending through the message, and if we're not careful, our body language is going to skew the message. There's a very famous line that I heard recently. I saw it on a shirt that says your facial closed caption is showing. And it's one thing to keep in mind, because our face might say one thing different from what we're trying to express. To kind of help demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to focus on, say, like a child who asks his mom for an ice cream, and the mom tells him no. That child hears that most popular trigger word in the English language, no. And what do? They cry. They start to cry, and when they're crying, they're using that behavior to send a message to the mom. I want an ice cream, and I really, really want it. And from there, the mom has a couple of options to choose. Do I give him the ice cream and soothe him, or do I let him cry it out? The thing about with most kids is if we don't address it early on, it escalates. We go from anxiety to defensive to what we talked about, acting out. And that's what we want to avoid. But if we look at our body language again at a glance, I mentioned if I stand up straight, most people will see that as confident. If I have an open posture with you, I mean, you're a host. You get to see a lot of people all the time. And I'm sure you can read people probably better than a lot. And if I have a closed posture, especially if I have my arms like this leaning back, probably means I don't really want to talk to you, right? It gives off the bad impression. But if my hands are out to the side, visible to you, and I remain eye contact, depending on what you feel comfortable with, if I see that you break it after every 3 or 4 seconds, I'll do the same so we can keep that relationship, a therapeutic relationship here. And even the way we smile to each other. You know, it's funny because I mentioned on here on our slide that our smile seems more genuine when it's slow, when it's a little bit more relaxed, as opposed to when you do it quickly. If I do a quick smile and just out of nowhere, just be like, you can tell it's fake. So usually genuine smile is a little bit, it's seen better as a slow movement. My hand placement, something I need to work on a lot, but I move my hands a lot when I talk. The main thing is when you're talking to somebody who's in a crisis or close to a crisis, we want to keep our hands visible. We don't want to put them in our pockets. We don't want to put them underneath the table. I want to keep them visible so they know that I'm not a threat. And finally, when you're making that eye contact, you don't want to make it weird. You don't want to be like staring at them the whole time, right? Know when to make it, when to break it. That's our body language through a glance. I wanted to include another example when it comes to the paraverbal. And this is an excellent example. You got 7 words, 1 sentence, that can make completely different meanings if I just emphasize each one of those words. For example, I didn't say he stole my wallet. Wasn't me. I didn't say he stole my wallet. Maybe I implied it. Maybe I thought it. I didn't say he stole my wallet. Maybe I wrote it or gestured it. I didn't say he stole my wallet. It's not him, somebody else. I didn't say he stole my wallet. He borrowed it, he found it. I didn't say he stole my wallet, somebody else's. Or finally, I didn't say he stole my wallet. He took something else, but not my wallet. That subtle change in the paraverbal on that word can completely change the meaning. And that's something that we really need to listen to when we're talking to somebody. We need to look at first, as you talked about earlier, the 4 stages. Anxiety being the first stage. With anxiety, what I'm looking for is a sudden change in behavior. I'm looking to see, is the patient or is the person, is the loved one, is the student, are they pacing? Are they breathing rapidly? Are they rocking back and forth? Are they isolating? I want to see what the behavior is, the change from their normal. And what it means is that there's something wrong with that person. It could mean that they're sick. It could mean that they're tired, they're lonely, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're scared. But I don't know until I ask. Once I notice that behavior, it is imperative that I try and find out the reason, the cause to why this patient has changed in their behavior, or the person, or the loved one, the student. Most of us know that if you're tired, you're sick, you're lonely, you're hungry, you're scared, all of that is fine, all of that is appropriate. But the behavior that a person presents is what may or may not be appropriate, given the setting. So if you see a change in behavior in the classroom, at home, or with one of your patients, it's important to assess why. Why did this person change? I want to get to this before my person in need, my person in crisis gets to fight or flight. Because once they get into their fight or flight mode, those senses of hearing are out the window. Your sense of logic is gone. You're thinking with your amygdala. It's the emotional part of the brain. So we don't want to focus on correcting or teaching or trying to show why this behavior is appropriate or inappropriate during a crisis. All we want to focus on is being directive. It's important to intervene early when you're dealing with a change in behavior, because you don't want it to escalate, because anxiety very quickly can turn into fear, and that fear goes into a sense of trying to protect oneself, and that can lead to risky behavior or acting out. Now, let me ask you a question. When do you think it's best to intervene at the 4 stages that we talked about?
At the 4 stages?
Yes. We have anxiety, we have defensive, we have risk behavior, and we have tension reduction.
I would say tension reduction, they may be able to process it a little bit better.
Yes.
But I was right.
Yes, tension reduction is when they can process a little bit better, but you want to intervene at the anxiety stage.
Okay.
Because it's easier to try and get somebody at the anxiety stage to try and follow you, to try and take you as a lead in that role. Once somebody gets into the defensive stage or risk, it's harder. They're not going to see you as somebody who wants to help. They might not see you as a partner. They'll see you as an authoritative figure. They'll see you as a threat, and they'll want to fight. Now, violence. Speaking of fighting, we want to prevent violence. Violence is a form of communication when all the other forms have failed. It's the way of how we try to protect ourselves when we feel angry, sad, or threatened. None of us want to see our loved ones, our students, or our patients try and get to this point. We all want to avoid our patients getting to violence. So it's important to intervene early. If we don't, things will escalate, and our focus today is to keep our loved ones safe. There's a very famous line from Martin Luther King that says, "Violence is the language of the unheard." And I think it's 100% true. If somebody feels unheard, they're going to go very quickly from anxiety to defensive. And if it does not get treated, if it does not get an intervention soon, it will lead to acting out behaviors. And that's what we're trying to avoid today. So how can we help? How can we help somebody so that they can avoid getting to these stages? Say what you see objectively is what you want to do it. Catch those red flags early and say what you see objectively. For example, I'll give you an example that actually happened at our hospital. I had a patient who wasn't mine, but I responded to a code, who was banging on the doors. He was punching the doors, kicking the doors. He wanted to get out. I went out to talk to him, and I asked him first what I saw. So I said, "I see that you're punching the doors. You seem like you're angry. Are you angry?" And his response, he punched the door again out of anger and said, "Yeah, I'm angry." I said, "Okay, I see that you're angry. What are you angry about?" I don't want to go to him and say, "Hey, why are you mad?" Because if I say something like that, it's going to get him more upset. It's going to sound judgmental on my part. So instead, I asked, are you angry? After pointing out objectively what I saw. Once I got that, now I know why he's upset. Now I can help. There's another commercial that's very famous, right, for Snickers. How does the saying go? You're not you when you're hungry. And they're okay once they have a Snickers, right? So what does the person want in the commercial? They're hungry, they want food. And Snickers made a very genius idea when they did this. Now, hunger, unfortunately, is not always the reason we're upset. It's a popular one why many people get upset. But it's not the reason most people get upset, so don't offer something until you find out why your patient, your loved one, or your student is upset. And that's where a lot of people tend to gravitate to. They see somebody who's in distress, anxiety, or defensive behavior, and they immediately want to fix it. Let me do something for you. Let me get you a snack. Let me get you a meal. Let me offer something. And that's not what we should do. Find out first, what are they communicating to me with their behavior? I see you doing this. Are you upset? And they'll tell you, yes, I'm upset. Okay. What are you upset about? Once I find out what's the source, now I can help. Okay. So a couple things that what we need to be aware of before we respond. Everyone has what we call precipitating factors. Precipitating factors are your stressors, your causes of trauma, any kind of event that's going in your life. My precipitating factor today, being online, right? That's a stress for me today. But if I don't take a moment to recognize that as a sign, as a stressor, it's going to cloud my judgment. Many of us have different stressors, whether it's financial, whether it's problems with loved ones. A big one right now, though, is financial. That feels like the prices keep going up, but our paychecks stay the same, kind of thing. And it's very stressful right now. And we're seeing a lot of that, not only in the mental health facilities, but everywhere in general. So I need to take a moment to find out first, am I ready to deal with these distress behaviors? Can I do so and be supportive, be empathetic? If I'm ready to do so, then I need to ask another question. How's my relationship with this person? Do I know them well? If it's a loved one, the answer is really easy, yes. If it's a student at a school, maybe I need to go get his assigned teacher. Maybe I need to get somebody else, like the counselor, somebody else who has a better relationship with the child. And the last one is your environment. Is my environment safe? Or is it making the situation worse? Things like lighting. Is it too bright? Is it overstimulating? Is it too loud? Is the radio or the TV too loud? Or is there too many people around that's causing my patient, my loved one, my student to get more anxious? And if there are other people around, are they antagonizing this person, making the situation worse? Do I need to remove anybody or remove that person from that situation? You really need to look at those three things: yourself, your relationship with that person, and the environment. Oh, sorry. Now for anxiety. Anxiety is fear and anger. Those are the two emotions that usually start tension, which goes to anxiety. Once we start to feel that tension, we feel the need to release it. And for most people, like we talked about a little while ago, there's two main ways to release that tension. You have physically and verbally. You can walk, you can run for the physical, or you can find somebody who will listen and you can talk it out. When we think of anxiety, what kind of behaviors do you think of? For many people, they might think of pacing, they might think of fidgeting, they might think of somebody who's withdrawing. Really good examples of anxiety. And at this stage, what helps the most is having somebody to vent to, which is tricky because, like I mentioned before, when people tend to listen, they automatically want to fix the problem. And that's what we need to refrain from. We need to listen to the person, to validate how they feel, to listen without judgment, listen empathetically. Our goal here is to help our loved one get to a point where they can release that tension, get that emotional support, and get out of that emotional mindset or thinking with their amygdala. That's our goal there for anxiety. Unfortunately, though, if things are not helped, if it's ignored, it can go to defensive behavior. Looks like it just changed on its own. All right. Sorry about that. But defensive behavior. So here we have the adrenaline state. Our emotions, unfortunately, tend to get worse if anxiety is not addressed. We tend to feel neglected, unheard, and threatened, whether it's a real threat or perceived to be real challenge or threats. And we tend to want to stick up for ourselves when we feel that way. That's natural. That's when we kick into the adrenaline states, your fight or flight. When you feel threatened, what do you tend to do? Most people protect themselves. They'll start to yell, they'll start to put their fist up in protection to show that they can get aggressive as well. They might scream, they might even threaten back, and all of that is normal. We are basically trying to hurt the person that is trying to hurt us. At this stage, what we need to focus on is the feelings, the behavior, and what they're trying to tell us through that behavior. That's what we need to figure out first. We're responding to somebody at this stage, like a loved one or a student or a patient. We need to set limits. We need to validate, continue to validate. You don't substitute the approach of validating and listening for setting limits. You do them both. And you focus on teaching them why this behavior might be incorrect at a later time, once they're out of that fight or flight mode. So that's what we're talking about here, is how to learn from it. Learning, when I can teach somebody what they did was inappropriate or what they did was unacceptable, I can do this once they get to that reduction of tension. Think of it as you would getting out of that fight or flight mindset. You start to think logically again. Maybe you feel bad about what you said or what you did. And what this tends to look like is when you're no longer flushed in the face, red in anger, your muscles are no longer tense. This is you outside of thinking with your amygdala. So as you start to think rationally, this is the time that you can learn. This is the time where you can think, you know what, this is what I did. Next time I can do this instead. If you're working with somebody who's in a crisis and you see them at this behavior, attention reduction, when they're withdrawn because of what they did earlier, or they're sad and apologetic, this is the time to teach. And the best kind of way I put it is this little graph here. I got the unexpected behavior, what's not allowed in society. You're yelling, you're kicking, you're screaming, you're withdrawing. And then we got a little boat representing most people. Most people want to automatically fix it. Got the carrots out there. There's not a rabbit on that iceberg, but they got carrots because they're trying to fix it. They're trying to fix those misbehaviors, when instead we should be finding out what's underneath that unexpected behavior. Is this person thirsty, hungry, sick, tired, lonely, scared? Find the reason behind the behavior. What are they trying to tell me? And that's my presentation with you.
That is all really fascinating, especially because, I mean, I feel like you see distress behaviors in kids a lot, but it can impact anyone. Like, I've seen adults have tantrums, so
yeah.
It can really impact. You see the gamut when it comes to all ages, right?
Correct. We try and help out anybody from the ages of 9 all the way up.
Yeah.
So we get all ages. We try and, of course, separate age groups, and we have different units at South Texas Behavioral for acuity. So we can make sure that those that may be triggered by loud noises are separated from those that are very loud. that could be triggering for that patient.
Now let's talk a little bit about the causes of distress behaviors and give a little bit more information on the variety of factors that could lead to distress behaviors. So trauma, past experiences that have caused significant emotional distress. And we know that trauma impacts our mental health, and trauma doesn't have to be something that you experience today. It could be something that dates back to your childhood. Is that right?
That's correct. I've had a situation where I had a patient that I met for the first time. She seemed very nice. She had a big old smile on her face when I first met her. I introduced myself. I was like, "Hi, my name is Greg." At that point, I was the charge nurse of the adolescent unit. And I said, "Hi, my name is Greg. I'm your charge nurse. Nice to meet you." She came at me with a big old smile. Had no red flags to think anything else of her. I gave her her urine cup so that she can give us her sample to make sure that she's okay to receive medications. And when she came out of the restroom with the cup, I should have gotten a red flag that there was no cap on the cup, only for her to throw it at me. It wasn't until later, when she felt comfortable with me, that she shared why she did that to me. Unfortunately, she had gone through a lot of abuse growing up, where she had no trust with adults. And as an adult, especially as an adult male, I was triggering her without even trying. So, yeah, that's how you can have an effect with trauma.
Now, mental health conditions, so depression, anxiety, and other conditions can lead to changes in behavior. So you're going to see that isolation, that withdrawal with depression, let's say. So you will see it with sort of having other factors that are playing into it when it comes to other mental health conditions.
Yes, especially with major depressive disorder, you will see a lot of isolation. You'll see the withdrawal. You'll see them not attending to their hygienic needs, not showering, not brushing their teeth. And those are all red flags that, hey, there's something wrong. They need somebody to listen.
Difficulty communicating, being unable to express needs or feelings verbally can lead to frustration and outbursts. And I would assume that would be something that you would see with anyone who really has a speech, difficulties with speech, let's say, or maybe there's a trauma survivor who had a traumatic brain injury. That can lead to those outbursts because you really can't say what you need to say.
Correct. Yeah. You can have changes in, like you mentioned, in your speech, the stutter. All of those can come up from trauma. Even not being able to hold in your urine correctly could be another issue that can come with trauma.
Sensory overload, so being overwhelmed by sensory input, that can cause distress and behavioral changes. So obviously, they tell you in a movie when there's going to be flashing lights and things like that, but anything like that can be a trigger for those behaviors.
Yes. The environment plays a huge role in your triggers. For example, if we're in a room with bright lights, and if I know that bright lights is one of my triggers, probably not a wise idea for me to be there. When we're dealing with an area, for us in South Texas Behavioral, we have a gym, which is amazing. It's got the loo. I don't know if you've had a chance to look
amazing.
At it. But it's an interactive screen for the adolescents. However, that room is very echoey. It's very loud. And if I have somebody who has a trigger of loud noises, that's probably the last place I want to take them, especially if I have a big group.
Changes in routine or environment, and I think this is one that we possibly see a lot, especially in kids. So transitions or unexpected changes can disrupt a person's equilibrium and trigger distress.
So we can see a lot of that, especially with kids.
Will you see distress behaviors in kids more in the summer because they don't have that routine that they're used to, and then you're forcing them to go somewhere or to wake up early when they thought they were going to be able to sleep in all day?
I actually see it both ways. When it comes to kids and teens, especially since they're on a set schedule at school, as long as they follow that set schedule, most of them do okay. Like you mentioned, when we get to the summer, they don't have that set schedule. We do see an increase in some of those adolescents coming back to us. We get them on a schedule, though, at South Texas Behavioral. So we have a set schedule at every hour of the day, something that they're supposed to be doing, whether it's a group session, whether it's meeting with a counselor, whether it's meeting with a nurse, a group session by one of our MHTs. There's a lot for them to do, and as long as they follow that schedule, it helps out. There's many studies that will back that up to say that having a set schedule really does help with mental illness.
And then the last one is physical discomfort. So feeling unwell, tired, or hungry can also lead to behavioral changes. So this is where hangry comes into
Yes.
play and getting hangry. And I know that when I was growing up, there was a saying related to Rice Krispie treats. I'm gonna snap, crackle, and pop right now if I don't eat some food. And so that just simply being hungry can trigger emotional distress.
Being hungry, which is where Snickers made a genius idea with their ad. You're not you when you're hungry. It does play a huge role, definitely. And unfortunately, if it's not addressed, it can go from being anxious about not having the food to distress behaviors of defensive and then acting out.
Now, what are some of the most common signs that you see when it comes to distress behaviors? What are some of the telltale signs that somebody's experiencing?
You want to catch it early at the anxiety stage. So the pacing, the fidgeting, and it's going to be very difficult for you to see this if everyone in a given room is doing something different. But in a classroom setting for teachers, where they have all their students doing the same thing, it's easier to spot. At South Texas Behavioral, we have, like I mentioned, our schedule. And all our patients are mostly doing the same thing on a task. And if there's somebody who starts to pace, somebody who starts to fidget, somebody who starts to breathe a little faster or maybe rock or isolate themselves, we can spot it quicker and address it at that stage before it gets worse.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the signs of distress. So academic signs or professional signs of distress would be a deterioration in the quality and quantity of work. So somebody who was always a high performer, all of a sudden their quality is slacking. They're going from an A to a C with their grades, or their reports that they used to submit to their supervisor are now not as detailed, let's say. So those kind of issues. Excessive procrastination, repeated absences from class or work, disorganized or erratic performance or behavior, and then frequent lengthy ranting or threatening types of emails. Sending those emails. So those are some of the ones that you would see in the workplace or in the classroom.
Correct. And those are your telltale signs that, hey, something's going on. There's a difference in the behavior. Why? Ask the person, are you okay?
Yeah, but you have to, first of all, you don't want to assume that you want to ask them.
Yeah, ask
I
them,
see what
I see your grades are dropping. Are you okay?
Yeah. And then now the physical signs, obviously, which you talked a little bit about. So a dramatic change in energy level, excessive weight gain or loss, worrisome changes in hygiene or personal appearance, frequent state of alcohol intoxication, noticeable cuts, bruises, or burns, and impaired speech or disjointed thoughts. So those are some of the physical signs that you need to look out for.
Yeah, and you want to be very careful especially with cuts and bruises. Not all of them are going to be obvious, like on your forearm. We do see a lot of people who go to self-harming behaviors in non-visible areas, like their thighs. If you have a loved one you feel is hurting themselves and you don't see anything on their arms, I would at least ask if they feel comfortable showing another part, like their legs, their thighs, if they're okay.
And with those self-harm behaviors, you'll kind of see somebody won't wear shorts anymore, especially these summer days that you're getting there, or they're always wearing a hoodie or long sleeves or wearing long pants, and you don't necessarily see a lot of skin.
Yes, and especially here where it's 103 degrees outside right now and they're wearing a hoodie. Why? What's going on?
Because I just got out of the movie theater and I'm still cold. but it could be several things. But it's always good to be aware of those changes.
Yes.
And then the social signs that you talked about. So withdrawal, isolation, strange or bizarre inappropriate behavior, inappropriate dependency. So really being dependent of the parent, clinging onto your parent might also be a sign, right?
Whether it's being too clingy with a parent or maybe even avoidant with a parent. Why are they avoidant with the specific parent? Is there abuse going on? Usually if somebody tends to withdraw around a specific person, it could be a sign of abuse. It could be them communicating to you through that behavior, like, hey, I don't feel safe with this person.
And then you get into the emotional signs. So inappropriate emotional outbursts, unprovoked anger or hostility or sobbing, exaggerated personality traits, more withdrawn or more animated than usual, unstable mood, including depression, irritability, anxiety, tearfulness, focus on suicide or harmful behaviors, expressions of hopelessness, fear, or worthlessness, direct statements indicating distress, and peer concern about a fellow employee or classmate.
Um, on those changes in behavior, one that I would like to talk about real quick. I got to hear kind of like a TED talk about a guy who attempted suicide, given his part of it. He talks about how having thoughts of suicide, how he was very ambiguous about it in the beginning, wasn't sure if it was something he wanted to do. He went over to his school so that he can drop all of his courses. He had to do that at the counselor's office. And right there, that should have been a red flag. Why does somebody want to drop all of their courses? But no, they clicked a few buttons, they dropped them, no questions asked. He got on a bus, sobbing. His plan was to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. While he's on the bus, obviously in tears, nobody asked him if he was okay. And he states that he wished anybody would have asked him. He understands that it's not anybody's obligation to ask if he's okay, but he wished that somebody would have asked him, "Hey kid, are you okay?" Unfortunately, when he got to the Golden Gate Bridge, he jumped. And when he jumped, he had an over 99% chance of not surviving that fall. He was very fortunate, very lucky that he did. And he mentions that the moment he let go of that ledge, he regretted his decision instantly. He wishes that somebody would have asked him if he was okay. And really, this is why I push catching it at the early signs the most, because we don't know what somebody's experiencing, what somebody's thinking, what somebody's going through when we walk at Walmart, when we walk at Target. Somebody could be showing you signs of anxiety, and if you see somebody tearful, you see somebody crying, you see somebody withdrawn, just a simple question of, "Hey, are you okay?" could mean a lot to that person.
It opens that door for conversation,
Yes.
and hopefully taking a step that will help prevent something serious from happening.
Yeah, and that's the biggest stigma there, is not only in the Valley, but in all the country. There's a huge stigma against mental health, that if I ask about suicide, it increases the risk of suicide. And that's not true. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. If I don't ask about suicide, they got nobody to vent to, nobody to talk to, nobody to open up to, and they're alone with those thoughts, and they're more than likely going to carry out that action.
But it's also a two-way street. So if I ask you, "Are you okay?" you have to be honest.
Yes.
And accept that hand that somebody has lent you.
Yes. Yeah, it's got to be genuine. If somebody comes up to you and just asks you, like when they ask you, "How's your day?"
Yeah.
Most people respond, "I'm okay,"
Yeah.
and move on. Somebody, though, who's experiencing depression at this level, where they're thinking about suicide, they might open up if you ask genuinely. If they see that empathetic ear, if they see you as just a casual, "Oh, I'm okay," they won't mean it. Yeah, most people will fake being happy, but very, very few can fake being depressed.
And it's important to remember that distress behaviors can take many forms. So we're talking aggression, anger, physical and verbal abuse, a refusal to stick to boundaries or rules, and self-harm or injury. So you really need to be paying really close attention, because it can show its face in many different ways.
Yes, which is why we look for a change from the normal behavior. For parents know their kids very well. You see how your child normally is, and if you see a change, ask. Bring up what you noticed, what was that change, and ask, "Are you okay?"
And now, how do we know if someone isn't just having a bad day or a bad week? How do we know when it's distress behavior and it's leading to something that could be a little bit more serious?
To find out if it's not just a bad day, it's going back to asking. If I don't ask the person I'm talking to, whether it's a loved one, a child, if it's a student at a school or a patient at behavioral, if I'm just assuming it's a bad day, I'm already doing a disservice to that person. I need to let them know what I see and ask. Best case scenario, they tell me they're okay. It's just a bad day, we move on. But if they are going through something, that's their window.
Now, 77% of Americans have used addictive behaviors or unhealthy coping habits or mechanisms to manage their mental health, according to Myriad Genetics a survey that they did nationwide. What are addictive behaviors or unhealthy coping mechanisms beyond alcohol and drugs? You always hear about alcohol and drugs, but what are some of those addictive behaviors or unhealthy coping mechanisms that you notice in people?
So aside from drugs and drinking, of course, Overeating is a big one, especially in the valley. Everything tastes amazing, right? The tacos that we eat, the pizzas from the new pizzerias that are opening up. It's overindulging when we feel anxious. It's going to casinos, driving to Eagle Pass and spending the money that way, or spending your money out in nightlife to the point where you overindulge.
Okay. So overindulging. And I know that you mentioned one of the common distress behaviors that you're seeing a lot in recent years has been cell phone addiction.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So very interestingly, the cell phone addiction has been added to the DSM, where we keep track of mental health disorders. From personal experience, I can share with you something that happened to me that kind of opened my eyes of how addicted I am to my phone. I got called. I don't know if you've ever done jury duty for the federal courts. I know most of us have done for Hidalgo County, but I've never done the federal court ever. When I got called in there, they told me I had to give them all my electronic equipment, including my phone. And then they put me in a room with about 60 other people. And they told us once we were all sitting down, hey, it's going to be about 2 hours before we even start. So for 2 hours, I'm sitting in a room with 60 other people without my phone. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all this time? Everyone's not really talking to each other, so it's very awkward. And I'm thinking in my head, man, I wish I had my phone so I can at least get lost in something, or a book or something. And that's when it hit me. I'm addicted to the thing. And I can see why it was added to the DSM. Cell phone addiction is big right now with adolescents. We see a lot of kids, the moment that they get their phone taken away, they get angry, they get upset, they go to these acting out behaviors. And that's something that we really, really want to focus on, especially with the adolescents that we're lucky enough to work with at South Texas Behavioral. We get to work with new coping skills. We get to, of course, remove the electronic equipment so they can spend some time getting to know somebody else in person, talking to the counselors, talking to their peers, and working through their problems.
And one of the other ones that you see often is obviously abuse, domestic and child abuse that we see. So that abuse, unfortunately, there's a victim involved in that when it comes to that distress behavior.
Yes, unfortunately with abuse, so there's many different precipitating factors that happen. The one that I talked about earlier right now, about being here online, was my precipitating factor. Unfortunately, though, for many, they have long-term precipitating factors. Abuse, trauma, PTSD, whether it's from childhood, it can carry on all the way to the adulthood if it's not addressed, if it's not helped. And that can lead to not trusting certain people. I had an incident once where I was talking to the adolescents, and there was one particular adolescent that didn't want to open up to me. At first I took it as maybe she's not ready to talk. It wasn't until I dismissed myself from the group and I told her, if you ever want to talk to me, again, my name is Greg, I'll be in the nurse's station, let me know. I went over to the nurse's station and about 5 minutes later she comes up, she says, Greg, can I talk to you? I got all excited thinking, okay, cool, she's going to open up to me, we're going to find out her root of the problem. Only for her to tell me, Greg, can I have a different nurse?
Wow.
And I took it as a hit, honestly, but I told her, yeah, I can talk to my house supervisor, I can get you a different nurse, but so that I can get better, can I ask what I did? She told me, no, it has nothing to do with you, it's just you look like somebody who hurt me in the past. Her PTSD was hit. Yeah. So I called my house supervisor, I had myself moved to the adult unit while she was there, so that she could grow, she can get better. Because even if I would have focused on other patients, just my
presence would still impact her in some way.
Exactly.
Now, another common distress behavior is intermittent explosive disorder, and you say you see this a lot in kids. What exactly is IED?
So IED is when you start having those where maybe a little while ago the child is okay, cooperative, and what seems to be out of nowhere, they get aggressive, they get threatening, they go straight to trying to fight. And unfortunately, we have seen an increase in this with the kids, those 12 and below. And we usually during school, we get a lot of those referrals from the school systems, whether it's Edinburgh, McAllen, or the rest of the valley.
Now let's talk a little bit about the importance of recognizing those warning signs and really being attuned to changes in behavior. So you know the individual the individual, whether it's a family member, whether it's a student in your classroom, you get to know them over the course of time. So really being attuned to their behaviors and their changes is really important.
Correct. It's the most important thing when you're helping somebody in a crisis situation. The earlier that you can catch it, the more than likely that person's going to listen to you at the anxious stage, that'll follow you, that'll take your assistance as help. But if you let it fester on, they might feel threatened, they might feel neglected, and now they're going to see you as oppositional. They're going to see you as a threat, and they're not going to want to cooperate as much. So early intervention is very important.
So what are some of the treatment options therapeutically for somebody who is showing those behaviors, those distress behaviors? Is it mainly therapy at the beginning, or how do you work with patients?
So if they're in the anxiety stage, I want to keep them away from getting to the defensive stage. I want to get them to tension reduction. So I'm going to first find out why the person's upset. I want to validate the reason that they're upset, because more than likely they're upset not because they want something crazy. They want something like food. They want something like shelter. They want something like water. They want a basic need, and they feel like it's unheard. Maybe they're lonely, they're tired, they're sick. All of that is acceptable, right? If you feel that way, it's perfectly acceptable to feel that way. But it's what they do with that behavior. And that's when I kick in. That's when I go in and ask, I saw that you were withdrawn. Are you okay? And I listen. I validate. I listen to them with empathy. Now, if things get worse, if you're responding to defensive behavior, which unfortunately a lot of people in our community, that's when we kick in, right? We give more attention to the people, like, for example, students at a school. We pay more attention to those that are doing the bad things. And those that are doing the good things, unfortunately, we overlook. That's the wrong way to do it. One of the things that we've been trying to integrate in South Texas Behavioral is to change that mindset. So we praise our patients when they do the right thing. When they go to a group session, maybe they weren't going to those before. Hey, good job, you went to the group session, that's great. When they take a shower, maybe they haven't showered before because they were feeling depressed, and now they took initiative to at least get in the shower. Maybe they didn't use soap, but at least they got in. Let's praise them. Hey, you got in the shower, that's great. We want to praise more than we redirect, so that they continue to show those behaviors and get better.
All right. Now, obviously, when you are dealing with distress behaviors, the situation can spiral, and de-escalation strategies are really important. So, what's your advice when it comes to helping de-escalate the situation so that you're able to get to that root of the problem and help them through it?
To get to the root of the problem is you having to ask, letting them know what you see and what you think's going on. Are you upset? Sometimes they'll hit you with anger. They might hit the table and say, yeah, I'm upset. Like, okay, I see that you're upset. What are you upset about? Once they tell you what they're upset about, now you can help. But if you do offer things for them to pick, offer something that you can carry out. Don't offer something that you can't do. When you are offering something, don't make a long list. Don't make it hard for yourself. Just offer two things. Two things that you can carry out with that person, whether it's a student or a patient, and then let them pick.
All right, and then remaining calm is really important. So I know you mentioned in one of your slides of assessing yourself and what situation you're in right now, but remaining calm is vital. And if you aren't able to stay calm, find somebody else who has a calm demeanor that may be able to help.
Yes, so when I worked in the adolescent unit, I was very close to one of our nurses who worked in the adjacent unit for the kids. And we had a system. If I was not feeling at my best, if I felt like maybe I had precipitating factors from home that might cloud my judgment, I would let her know. I would tell her, hey dude, I'm not feeling at my best. I might need a little bit of help. And she would tell me, I got your back. And it was the same the other way around. That teamwork is very important, whether it's at a hospital, whether it's at school, that teamwork is very important.
Now, how important is positive behavior support? And especially in the hospital setting, I assume that you're doing the assessments, you're creating the behavior plans and things like that. But even in the home, creating that positive behavior support is crucial.
It is very. So when you're at home and you see your child do something that you've been wanting them to do, the wrong attitude would be saying something like, oh, finally he did it. No, don't do that. Instead, praise them. Praise them, let them know that what they did was right and that you appreciate it. It will give them that incentive to, hey, I got some attention when I did the right thing, maybe I want to do it again. But if I'm only giving attention when they do the wrong thing, that's the only attention they get, they're going to continue that pattern. And that's the pattern we're trying to break. So
those rewards for positive behaviors can go a long way in helping a person through their distress behaviors.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Now, what should you do when it comes to if someone is basically in sort of that crisis, that distress behavior? What should you do if the crisis seems to be life-threatening or if the individual's behavior is extreme?
So that's the main thing that we're trying to avoid by catching it early. However, there's going to be situations where something like that can happen, where maybe there's a potential of a life and death situation. In that case, call the local PD. Our police departments, many of them are trained to handle those situations, high stress intervention, and they can take over from there. Now, if you are catching it early and this is an ongoing thing, where you've been calling PD maybe a couple of times, having them screened by a counselor from Texas Tropical, or even having an officer come by to do a screening themselves, and we can decide from there, do they need to seek services at a counselor setting, or do they need to be at a behavioral center like ours?
Mm-hmm. And then what should you do if you feel threatened or intimidated? Again, call 911.
Yeah, if you feel threatened or you feel intimidated first, increase your space. Don't stick around, don't stand your ground. Increase that space with that other person, take the threat seriously, and call 911.
Mm-hmm. So when should you seek professional help for yourself or a loved one who may be experiencing distress behaviors? Right as soon as you start noticing it, right? Like because you want to catch it in the anxiety stage. So as soon as you start noticing those changes in behavior, is that when you should be calling?
As soon as you see those changes in behavior, first address the crisis in that situation. If that escalates, of course, we would call PD. But you want to keep it at that stage. And then from there, the conversation that you have, what the person opens up to, are they receptive to your help? You might be able to maybe do some outpatient counseling and handle it that way. Mm-hmm. However, if you get to those risky behaviors where the person's putting themselves at risk or putting somebody else at risk, definitely call PD, have them screened, and maybe be brought up to one of our facilities.
Mm-hmm. And the key is that you're not looking at the behaviors, you're trying to really find out the underlying reason for it. That's the key, is just figuring out what is the issue, because then you can figure out a solution.
Correct. And that's one thing that I share with our new hires coming into South Texas Behavioral, is that unfortunately you're gonna hear some unhelpful, very hurtful comments. But it's not about you in that situation. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not even really talking about you. You just happen to be that lucky person that's in front of them when they're hit with this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. This has all been very enlightening, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And that officially concludes our webinar. We thank you for watching. We hope you'll continue to prioritize your mental health and the mental health of your loved ones. Now, if you are experiencing mental health challenges, STHS Behavioral can help. The facility has served the South Texas community for more than 30 years, offering inpatient and outpatient treatment options. If you or a loved one is experiencing a mental health issue, you can schedule a confidential assessment by calling the hotline at 388-1300. Please remember remember, you are not alone. Speak with a loved one or seek professional help if you need emotional or mental health support. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call the National Suicide and Crisis Line at 988. Licensed counselors are available to speak with you in English and Spanish 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, don't miss our next installment of this Let's Talk Mental Health series on Wednesday, July 3rd, due to the 4th of July holiday, when we will be broadcasting live at 5:30 p.m. via Facebook, and we'll be talking about self-care. We hope you can join us. And to watch our previous Let's Talk Mental Health seminars, all you have to do is visit sthsletstalk.com. Until our next webinar, stay healthy, stay safe, and please continue to prioritize your mental well-being. Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority.